Hey guys, so welcome back to to my Star Trek rankings. Last time I ranked the odd numbered films, and now I'm on to ranking the even numbered films, which is basically Star Trek Two all the way up to Star Trek Beyond. And so let's get right into it. So coming in at number seven, as for my least favorite out of the even numbered Star Trek films, and that is Star Trek Beyond. I know this is a film that, while not being financially successful, it definitely has a lot of people who do love it and think it's a great improvement over Star Trek Into Darkness. It really, feels like Star Trek, really, how the original films, the old six films, because they're all kind of like old, middle aged. But this is where it's not an origin story. They're not remaking anything. It's it's the crew, the original cast, crew, young on an adventure, and yeah, I could see that. But the problem is, this movie is it's just forgettable. Say what you want about Into Darkness, I feel like I come out of that movie kind of like remembering stuff in my head. Think back to some scenes that I thought were very fun, and very emotional and very thought provoking. Because listen, Star Trek, I really don't think Star Trek Into Darkness is not that bad at all. It's the most underrated Star Trek film, and I really do prefer that movie over Beyond. And yeah, I know, but it's Beyond is more original, but the plot is just not really that interesting. It's about the crew being stranded on a planet. It's not really interesting. Again, this movie's just forgettable because this is the first and only Star Trek film I've seen in the theaters, and just kind of after I came out of it, I just didn't even remember the much about it because it just wasn't really that impactful on me. The only thing I just remembered was that cool beaming thing at the Yorktown thing. Idris Elba turning out to be a human. Enterprise crashing. Old Enterprise. This was just a very forgettable film. Coming out of it, I don't really remember that much. But again, at the end of the day, the cast is still good. Idris Elba is fine as a villain, even though he's not really written well. And the action is pretty fine. I mean, this was directed by Justin Lin of Fast and the Furious, not J.J. Abrams. And I will admit, with him not J.J. Abrams not directing this film, it does kind of make it look a little dull, since Justin Lin I don't think is a very great director as J.J. Abrams. I mean, because in the first two, the camera's always spinning around and the lens flares. And yeah, I know the lens flares are annoying, but I don't know. It gave it a style a bit, and Beyond just kind of comes out, it's such a dull looking movie. But anyway, so yeah, that's Star Trek Beyond. Now on to number 6 is the only next generation movie, Star Trek First Contact. As I said in the last film, the Next Generation films were just not really that great. They were always had so much trouble with, just trying to make these characters just like the original cast. But, again, Next Gen is just not the same as the original Star Trek, so it doesn't really work out. And, they try to make this action stuff. But even these actors and the people, the writers, they weren't these action people. But I will admit, First Contact is still a very good movie. Having James Cromwell, the farmer from Babe, as the guy who cracks warp speed, encountering with the Vulcans. It's all very good. I like that stuff. I like that it is a bit of a horror movie. It does bring back the whole thing of Wrathicon, with it being a Moby Dick story. The Borg is pretty great. The Borg Queen is a really great design. The makeup is terrific in that. It's a very fun film. It's definitely watchable. The best out of the Next Generation films. It's definitely entertaining. And that's really it to say about First Contact. It's definitely it's a fun, entertaining popcorn blockbuster that definitely has a lot of good ideas to it. All right, now so on to number 5. So throughout this top 5, I love these Star Trek films. These are my favorite of the Star Trek movies. Like, these are just films I will watch a lot. So anyway, now on number 5, which is Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, or Star Trek, The One with the Whales. And this movie could really just fail. The idea of Star Trek being comedic, being fish out of water, something like Crocodile Dundee or something. This sounds like it would be terrible. But no, this movie is actually funny.
I have a hunch that we'd all be a lot happier discussing this over dinner. What do you say?
You guys like Italian?
No.
Yes.
Yeah,
No.
no.
Yes.
No.
Yes. I love Italian. And so do you.
Yes.
Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard. How quaint.
There is like not one joke in this movie that where you just cringe on how bad it was. I legitimately think there's like no bad joke in this movie. It's perfect. It's perfect. I don't know. It's really good. Star Trek 4. It's a funny film. I don't know. This is such a film that's so entertaining to watch. I don't have that much to say. It's basically the only I know I said motion picture it's the only one that doesn't have a villain. This movie still has a villain though. So people just don't correct me on that. Which is Mankind. But anyway, it's a movie that would just fail. A comedy that's also kind of this political, public service announcement about humpback whales. And you know what, you end up enjoying it, and it's a really fun Star Trek film at the end that kind of was a good boost up after kind of like Star Trek 3 not being being good, which Star Trek 3 is still good, but you really felt like you were seeing watching an actual adventure happen. Alright, so now on to number 4, which is Star Trek from 2009. This really... Now, Trek fans might not like the new Star Trek Abrams trilogy, and I get it, but when you look at the status of what Star Trek was in 2009, with the movies and just TV shows not doing so well... This movie just is such a good refresher. It feels so refreshing watching this film. Because after just watching 4 films with just writers trying to be action directors, but then you kind of just watch them bring in these new people, these new writers who have experience with action, J.J. Abrams of Mission Impossible, and Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orca of the Island and Transformers. People who understand action, and actors who have done action stuff, like Simon Pegg of Hot Fuzz. And it's just everything coming up from, rebuilding this franchise. It's just really a great film. It's a great adaptation of the original TV show that doesn't come off as oh, this isn't your grandpa's Star Trek. This is... it is the most... It's still, I think, this is so... It's still a very Trekky film. The characterizations of Kirk and Spock is terrific. Because, and for a movie that is sort of a prequel a bit, and, and I'm... For a person that's not a, prequel person, not a big fan of going back, but for this movie, it doesn't really... Something in the Star Wars, in Revenge of the Sith, how everything just happens at once with Anakin becoming Darth Vader, or in Last Crusade, just having that entire scene with Indy just becoming Indiana Jones with the whip, the hat, and the scar on the chin. No, because still you feel like Kirk has still a lot more to go on in this trilogy, and there's not this feeling of everything is really complete. Like, this isn't still a complete story. This is just the beginning of, like, of the crew, and it's just an amazing prequel reboot. I love it. I can't really say that much about it. I love it. It's just a great way to reintroduce this franchise that was just so stale and dead at that point. And yeah, that's Star Trek. I love it. So now on to number 3, which is going to get controversial, which is going to be Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Now, still top 5. I don't really even have, like, I wouldn't even say, like one is a number 1, 2, 3. Like, this is all, like, films I love. I don't really even have, like, an official ranking with them. I love all these movies. And Wrathicon is still a really good movie. I love how it is just, this coming out right after the motion picture, a very, like, dull, just an overall kind of, like, boring, dull film with not, like, a good, like, protagonist and antagonist. This film is great. I mean, because this is another film that's pretty much doomed to fail. I mean, they get this guy, Nicholas Meyer, who knows shit about Star Trek. And so, he's practically just, like, rewatching all these episodes. And then he decides to reintroduce a character who, Khan, who was now, at that point, was kind of more best known for being on Fantasy Island, and now he's coming back in this film, and he's old, and this also just came out in a very big summer. Like, I mean, you have E.T., The Thing, Blade Runner. 1982 was a pretty big summer, guys. And it's just overall just a good science fiction film. I mean, that dives really deep into just Kirk as this guy who's getting old, and and in the past, it's about the past just haunting him. Because this is a film, like, where all you have to do is you have to just watch this one episode of the original series, Space Seed, and it is just really great on how it's basically revenge about Kirk, like his demons coming back to haunt him. It's terrific. I love Wrath of Khan. It is like a great Moby Dick story, basically. Like, this is the film that really makes, Starfleet, the Enterprise, feel like a ship on the water. I love what Nicholas Meyer has done to Star Trek. Nicholas Meyer was definitely like the Martin Campbell to Bond. And so yeah, any Star Trek movie with Nicholas Meyer is amazing. So on to number 2. I think everyone knows what number 2 is going to be. Galaxy Quest. Now, I have not been very, I wasn't that kind to Galaxy Quest before. I didn't really like it that much. I thought it was too kiddish, because if a lot of people know the story, this movie had a lot of cuts to it, especially the scene with Sigourney Weaver. Oh, well, that's such a really bad dub. But, anyway, the film, I think just, like, it's a Star Trek film really in spirit. It really, like, you feel like, you're actually just watching, like, the real relationship between, like, these cast members. And it's just amazing. I just love everything at, like, the Comic-Con convention thing. And it's just, like, Alan Rickman's feud with Tim Allen. It's just really good, like, chemistry. The cast, how they work together is great. Sam Rockwell, who's basically a red shirt guy who's like with them. That's amazing to have. Like, you really just feel like you're watching, like, just imagine if this really was the original team, like, this was the original cast, like, this was even, like, if this was actually Star Trek 6, and this was, like, the cast after Star Trek 5, after the failure of that. This movie would have been hilarious after that. And it's just a fun film. It's just a funny comedy just about, like, aliens who think that the historical documents I can't say that much. This film it's such a hilarious movie and a great like character study on Trekkies and the fan base and the culture and just like the actors coming to really embrace what they really are and how special they are. It's definitely a great love letter to Trek fans. And watching it again, I've loved this film even more. It's still really great. Alright, so now on to number 1, which is what I consider to be the best Star Trek movie. And I think you all know what it is. And it is Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Again, this is by Nicholas Myers, who again, he is the Martin Campbell of when it comes to Star Trek movies. So, please, Nicholas Meyer, if you're watching this, which you're probably not, just direct Star Trek 4. Wow. Star Trek 6 is just such a great conclusion just to the original cast. I mean, it's such a great way the cast went out. From a TV series that got canceled and even just like went really bad when it came to the 3rd season. And the fact that they get like this, the fans get a treat, got this great prize of 6 Star Trek movie adventures, and just ending on such a great bang. And it was such a great, it has such a great story about and the whole premise of the Cold War and just everything about the wall falling in space, and just kind of setting up what happens in Next Generation with the Klingons and the Federation, and it's all about the future and change. And Kirk has a greater arc in this about him learning to accept the future with the Klingons, and trying to forget about forgiveness about his son. And it is so brilliantly handled. And it's still one of the best Star Trek movies to really just deal with the message. And with this message of how even today politically, today we need how countries, politics, and how we at the end of the day we need to come together to form this undiscovered country. And it's such a beautiful movie that just has such a beautiful ending for the cast. I mean, this movie has the same end credit sequences from that Endgame would later do. I'm not joking. It ends with their letters in their names in script, like what they did in Endgame. I'm serious. That's what they do at the end of this film, because it was really deserving. And just, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a really great Star Trek movie, and it's really brilliantly concluded. It's such a well-concluded film to the original cast, and it is just a great Star Trek movie all around. So there you go, guys. That is it for my Star Trek even-numbered and odd-numbered rankings. I don't really care about this thing, At the end of the day, Star Trek films are great, and let's hope at the end of the day, Star Trek 4 won't be bad, if it ever happens. But anyway, in the meantime, guys, please subscribe. Thank you for watching this video, and leave a like, leave a comment saying what is your favorite even-numbered Star Trek movies. And live long and prosper.